So, I'm just having some time to sit and ponder, with this new information that's coming out about Mr. Combs, Puff, the allegations, and what the allegations against him, how they are similar to the allegations to other powerful men in either the music business or just celebrities in general. And the different ways that these things can be interpreted. A lot of people ask the question, why? Why would a person who can have anything, seemingly anything that they want, because of the money and the influence that they've accumulated, why would they go to the lengths of forcing people to engage in the activities that they're doing, putting themselves at risk of losing the entirety of everything that they've amassed? And I was watching something on YouTube today, and it reminded me of something that I learned when I was in school about war and wartime sexual violence. And I can't help but think that there's some correlation to those things. That throughout history, empires, men of power, or people of power have used sexual violence or forced sex, rape, as a means to show dominance over those that they've conquered. It's part of the conquest. Like, yes, I beat you in the war, and to add insult to injury, I am going to rape you to show you that in all facets, I will dominate you. And the physical effects and the lasting psychological effects from being violated in that way last way longer than the actual physical mortal wounds to the body. Like, what that does to your mind, it is a not very subtle form of subjugation. You feel powerless to the person who took something like that from you by raping you. And it's in that way, to those people, an ultimate sign of power. Similar to those groups that believed consuming the bodies of their enemies gave them the power of their enemies. Cannibalism within wartime conflict, within religious practices, all of these things are thought or were thought to be ways to show or amass power over said individual that was the victim. And it seems as if in a 21st century way, these individuals in entertainment are continuing on with the legacy of sexual violence as a mechanism of power. And although, the public is outraged, right? It seems congruent and parallel to the demographics of back in the day, that the people who don't have the power, who tend to be the victims and the subjects of these violations, are the ones that are the most outraged. But those that are in the circles that are exposed and closer to that power structure, they're not surprised. They know that it's going on and they don't participate, or they do. But ultimately, at this point in history, because it's not accepted, they're quiet about it until it gets exposed, and their light might be dimmed because of how close they are to that individual or that situation. And I feel like that cycle is what we're witnessing. These individuals operate for years, decades, participating in these activities that ultimately feed their ego and their sense of entitlement, and give them a sense of power, or are demonstrations of how powerful they are over the people that they're victimizing. And it is genderless in the sense that men and women throughout history have been victims of wartime sexual violence. I don't think that either or is, male or female, is a bigger crime. I mean, if you were talking about a war crime, the thought process is that women and children are non-combatants, so they should be spared those types of interactions. But back in the day, in history, there wasn't that much. In war, there wasn't any civilization. Like the Geneva Convention and the treaty and all of those things didn't really exist. So there things that were considered war crimes then, or things that are considered war crimes now, weren't considered war crimes then. So women, children, and men were raped, and it was thought to be a much a larger sign of power and conquest for you to rape the defeated warriors of the army that you were fighting. So when you see in modern day times, a Harvey Weinstein he's not a warrior, he's just a coward, and a powerful one at that, who is taking advantage and forcing women to do his bidding. But it is definitely a sign of power. There's no connection, there's no nothing. He's simply doing it to exercise his control and his perceived power and authority over these people. And it's funny to me for us to continuously see these examples and then deny that this is a thing, when throughout history it's a pattern. The things that Puffy is allegedly accused of, those are things that have been happening throughout history. So yeah, it's fucked up that he's doing it, but it's not brand new. You're in a time now where people are outraged to a certain extent, but this is just the first time that we're hearing about it. But, these reports come out and, it's the less talked about, it's the way that the reports of these weirdo parties and these exercises of occult happenings, the whispers and the rumors of foul shit going on behind the scenes with people that we're endeared to, people that we feel some type of connection and we champion them. And the idea is that you want to feel good about the people that you support. So that makes it even more difficult, because it'd be easier to believe it about somebody that you didn't love. So because we're personally invested in these people, in their story, you don't want to believe your hero is a villain. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's no way getting around it. Like, for a religious person, we are made in the image of, and we have some characteristics of, but we are not God. Or we're not omnipotent. We're not all-knowing. We're not all-seeing. We have the gift of free will and the ability to have domain over our intention. But who and what we are has always been written or has always been decided by an entity that is everlasting. We're here for a time period in this form, but we just don't have the ability to manifest the same way that nature does. Again, we have characteristics and we're able to do some things, but it's not comparable, in my opinion. And unfortunately, you have these people with the desire to attempt to amass that type of power. And these rituals, these ritualistic sacrifices, these things that they participate in, they're not about pleasure in the way that we think of pleasure and sex. It's not because it feels good. It's because it shows power and the power feels good. Right? Like, a person could have proclivities, but if you enjoy violating someone, forcing someone to do something against their will, it makes you feel good because you're able to force them to do something that they don't want to do, not because it feels good. It's not simply a sexual, it's not a sexual conquest. It's a power struggle, or it's a power exercise. And it's not new. It's not new, and it's going to continue. Like, the idea that, exposing it is going to keep it from happening again. No, what keeps it from happening again is not allowing people to amass the type of power that gives them access to even attempt to do these type of things. But the possibility of being that powerful is intoxicating. And so it drives so much of the economy and so much of the culture seeking out a level of influence and power, not just over your own circumstances, but over others. And it can start out a good way. You may want to have that type of power so you can help a bunch of people. But eventually, you're going to get to a point where, it's never enough. And you're going to have to, quote unquote, compromise your values, or be content with the level of power that you're at. And, I think that's a difficult thing to expect from someone with the mindset and the discipline and the work ethic and just in the mania that it takes to get to that level of power and influence and wealth. To turn around and ask that person to turn those things off that got them where they're at, and to get into a holding pattern. It's the appetite for power is voracious. It's insatiable. And you're seeing it in real time. Seeing these people feel like they're above law and order. And not law and order like, state law, federal law, but just the laws of humanity, the order with which we should see each other and treat each other. And these concepts can get a little confusing because, it's a difficult thing, but it's a pretty obvious thing, when you desire to see everyone as worthy of humane and humane treatment and respect, but yet you want to acknowledge these people who have excelled and exceeded and become, iconic. in a way. And that's a dangerous characterization, because when you start to worship someone, you start to actually support their entitlement. You almost give credence to the mindset that, yo, I'm all of this. I deserve to have this type of power and this access because look at what I've done. And this is kind of a sidebar, but it's not. Like, I'm uncomfortable with that. Like, I want to help as many people as I can, and especially my family. I love them. I wish I could do everything for them, or provide an opportunity for them to do for themselves in a way that they couldn't have prior to my assistance. But I understand that certain things may be beyond my control once I'm exposed to that experience or that sensation. I think the best and the only situation where I've experienced something similar was this was some years back. I injured myself exercising, and when I went to the doctor, I don't normally go to the physician. I normally try to, I don't say treat myself or treat the symptoms myself. But this was a situation where I ended up in the ER because I really couldn't. I was in so much pain. I was afraid that I actually really injured myself bad, where I thought, okay, I need some intervention. Because I must have tore something. I must have done something, because I can't. The pain is too much, and the limited range of motion was just too much for it to not be something more serious. So anyway, I went to the ER, and they gave me some muscle relaxants, and then they gave me what I have. At that point, it's the first time I've ever been prescribed any type of narcotic medication. They gave me some Tylenol 3, Tylox, Tylenol with codeine, whatever the case may be. And so I get home and I take it. And the feeling that I felt was indescribable. Like, I felt so good. I felt so good that it was scary to me. Like, I remember the first thought once that medicine kicked in was like, I understand how people get addicted to this feeling because it's euphoric. Especially if you're in pain, or your perception is that you're in pain, and this is what you take to relieve it. You feel amazing. And once I felt that was the last time that I took that medicine, because I knew, yes, I'm a strong individual. I don't think I have an addictive personality. I'm habitual. So the biggest way for me to succeed is to make something a habit. But that feeling was so good, I wasn't sure that I could expose myself to it too many times to where, okay, I want it even when I'm not in pain. And so I haven't had a narcotic since. So, when we're seeing these things play out with Puff or Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein or any of the other bigger or smaller instances where men of power are seen basically throwing their weight around and exercising that power in damaging ways to other people, dominating and controlling people in a way simply as an exercise and an expression of that power. Like, that's how they get off, is saying, how many people can I make do what they don't want to do today? Like, the thought process that goes behind someone actively fighting against you, and the fact that you can force them gets you off, or the fact that you can put them in a position where you don't have anything to lose and they have everything to lose, and you can coerce them into being cooperative. It's the same as holding their arms down or tying their feet to the bedpost. If you can take away somebody's livelihood without them complying with your wishes, it's just like you're holding them down. And, you know, quoting Kanye, and this may not be the context with which he meant this, but no one man should have all that power. And until we start to take heed to those type of warnings, these are the things we're going to experience, because at the end of the day, we're just men and women. We're just human. And, you know, we're not the entity that created us. So I just think that instead of sensationalizing the discoveries and the lawsuits and how we're choosing to prosecute and how we're going to get all this information, instead of focusing on that, I think the focus should be on how can we as a society eliminate the structure, the power structure that's in place right now. Like, to accumulate generational wealth, or to start a plan to help accumulate generational wealth, unfortunately for most, doesn't happen within their lifetime. It's something that, especially when you start from under zero, it's an accumulation, right? It's building a legacy, you're part of the legacy, and then passing it on to someone else, and then them carrying it on and growing it, and so on and so forth, till you have, a family that is self-sufficient in a way. Instead of, people trying to create generational wealth for multiple generations, all within their own lifetime. I think that's a noble thought. It's a noble aspiration, but doing that puts you in a space where you're going to be exposed to a level of power and influence that could corrupt anyone. And I think it's a dangerous thing to try to take on. And why run the risk? I don't think that any of the individuals, I don't know Harvey Weinstein, and I don't want to make this a racial thing, but my connection to the culture. So when you're talking about Russell Simmons, you're talking about Puff, or you're talking about, you know, an artist in the hip hop space, it's kind of like, I have a different type of feeling when those individuals fall from grace. You know, the connection is different. And who knows? You know, maybe those things, those thought processes have always been in them. Those urges have always been in them. But I'm more likely to believe that the higher and the more successful they got, the closer they got to the sun. And, you know, the sun being these entities that, you know, ultimately are asking you to sacrifice you to get into the space that they're in. And it's like, once you turn that corner, it's hard to come back, because power is addictive. So I don't know. I hope for justice. I'm a supporter of the truth. Like, I don't want Puffy to be guilty. I don't want him to be, you know, associated with these things, but I want much more to know the truth, and for whoever's responsible to be dealt with accordingly. So we'll see. Until next time. Please check the link in the bio. Share, like, subscribe, hit the bell with those notifications. You can comment. You know, everything is open for your, you know, comments, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm there to be active and interact with you all. So until next time, stay safe.